This is question 3 of the evaluation. How did my production skills develop through this project? So first off, I'll be talking about what I learned through Photoshop in adjusting my images. So here you can see a few before and after photos of some of the images that I took that I included in my magazine. Um, First here in this first image, a couple of the things that I did in Photoshop were like manipulating the image levels for the to adjust the brightness and darkness effect. So basically, what this allowed me to do is bring out more of the darkness in the image without darkening like the subject's facial features, so that like the image doesn't become too dark and hard to see his facial features. Um, and then also to achieve this more blue tinted effect, I used the color balance adjustment um, tool, and this basically allowed me to play with the shadows, the midtones, and the highlights of the image to try and to eventually achieve this more blue tinted effect, and it's I believe it's more effective than just putting on a filter because you can adjust it a lot more, and you can achieve a much more refined effect than what you're looking for. Similarly, in these two images here, I did similar. I went through a similar process than with this image. I adjusted the image's color balances to achieve this blue tint, as well as the image layer, image levels adjustment to try and create some more darkness in some areas, while trying to not make it too dark so that you can still see the subject's facial features, and the detail is still quite visible. Here I've done it. I've used the color balance a lot less, but I did it just to a point where you could his shadow is just seen as like a blue tint, and the reason I wanted to do this with these images with the blue tint is because it actually follows my um, magazine's house style, and I thought it would be good to include it. With this final image here, I simply put a filter, a black and white filter over it in Photoshop, as well as using some image levels adjustment to try and darken out some of the areas of the photo so that it wasn't too oversaturated. Moving on to camera techniques that I gained and learned through the production process was if I go to my contact sheet, I can explain. Um, so here you can see in this photo set that I took outdoors, I played with my camera's shutter speed. I lowered my camera shutter speed to achieve this blurry light effect, and it's because the it took the image slower, so it allowed more time for the light to come in therefore leading the light to have trails behind it. Similarly, since this was an outdoor photo, I had to experiment with the camera's ISO levels, and I did this to make sure that the image was not too dark, yet also not too bright. So I managed to achieve the right ISO levels, and to create good images, in my opinion, which I was happy with, which had a good effect. Um, for most of the indoor photo shoot studio uh, photos, the camera's ISOs weren't really adjusted. They were just kept the same because I used more um, of the lighting to achieve different lighting effects of like physical lighting. Okay, so now I'm going to be talking about how my skills have developed using the InDesign software to create my actual magazine. So, first of all, something that I've learned about InDesign is that when inserting images, any of the images into the magazine, you should always use a Photoshop file as if you wanted to do any of extra adjustments to the um, images after you've already inserted them, you could go back to the file in Photoshop, edit them, and then it will appear the same way in the magazine. Um, Other things that I've used and learned is including lots of text manipulation. For example, the masthead and many of the cell lines, the main cell line, uh, using these effects, the hollow plus symbol. These are all using different text adjustment and manipulation tools, such as using different fonts, using size adjustment, spacing adjustment, um, just generally moving it, being able to move it around, using text boxes to be able to place it in different areas. I've also one of the tools that I've used a lot in my magazine is the simple square tool. As you can see throughout the magazine, in areas such as like creating this bar, the smaller bar, um, in, also just include creating these pull quotes right here, or not pull quotes, mini just descriptors. They're all using the square tool, and I've also like done small little extra adjustments such as rounding the squares just for added effect. Like here, you can see that, and there's also I've also adjusted the opacity of these squares to like just add more to the effect. Um, Here you can see lots of use of just text box and spacing tools to try and achieve the nicest effect and make it look aesthetically pleasing. Um, I've used different tools to try and adjust the colors of the magazine to try and get it as close as possible. I've used tools to adjust the padding of different things, such as here in the pull quote, you can see I've used tools to create padding around it, just the amount that I wanted. Um, Similarly, here using in this image, in this section of the article, um, you can see I've added borders to some of the images, these two images, and I thought that this just created a good effect, create more of a contrast between the images. And these are just some of the tools that I've used in creating my final magazine, my final product. Finally, there's another thing I could mention is it's a subtle effect that I've included in my magazine is using the shadow tool just here in the main cell line, as I think is just adds a subtle but yet effective little effect to my front cover just to add to that the overall aesthetic of it. I'm going to be talking about what I've learned about project documentation through this project. So first of all, using Google Sites to present all of my work in one space is one thing that I've learned. I've learned how to use different tools in Google Sites, and one important thing that I've learned how to use is embedding. So, for example, the embedding of videos and or the embedding of Google Slides or the embedding of Google surveys, such as my audience survey. I've learned how to embed these files into the web page so that people can view it easily and interact with it and play videos and so on. Um, Another thing I've learned in terms of documentation is using the QuickTime Player software on the computer, and I've used this to record screencasts such as this one, um, as well as videos of myself talking to the camera. Um, Another thing I've learned is video editing. Um, Video editing uh, using specifically Final Cut Pro. I've used Final Cut Pro to stitch together footage for videos, even for these evaluation questions, and I've learned how to cut out pieces of where I've made mistakes and make the videos flow better. Um, I've learned about screen captures, how to take screen grabs and create images of other things on the laptop. Here in the peer assessment, you can see how where I've used screen captures to take photos of another person's website and magazine. Um, I've also, for project documentation, I've also learned how to use a 360 camera to create a 360 video. Um, Here you can see in the behind the scenes where I use the 360 camera to create this video and how to use that. I've also learned about uploading videos to YouTube before I embed them into my website so that people can view them and are yeah so that they're able to view them on my website. Okay, I'm going to be talking about some of the different lighting setups for my photo shoots. So first of all, I have this snoot attachment, and what this allowed me to do was pinpoint my lighting to create a more chiaroscuro effect on my subject, and I use this for my front cover and article images. Second, I used a barn doors and honeycomb grid attachment to create more directional light and create a strong shadow behind my subject. And I use this for my some of my content space images. Third, I used a light diffuser umbrella to create softer light effects.